So Adam Amin, it's been a long time coming, but this is awesome to finally get a chance to chat with you.
No, man, this is awesome. Finally get a chance to connect. This is great.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. You were among my bucket list interviews, and I remember the day I made that list. You were actually doing the A's game on TV, and I just gone the commercial, and then I got a DM from you. I'm like, oh wow, this is awesome.
Man, that feels like such a long time ago too.
Oh
And it
God,
really
I
wasn't. It was
know.
only like 4 or 5 months ago, but it feels like
It
like an eternity.
it does. Yeah, it feels forever ago. Baseball season in general. But yeah, I was gonna say before we kind of jump into it, I love the social media. I love the Instagram stories, but like the pregame notes before NFL games and Bulls games. I think it's really cool when you kind of give us that look, I guess, basically into your world a little bit.
No, I like it. It's nice to be able to share like that we're not just handed this stuff.
Yeah,
Like we're not
right.
making it up as we go. And listen, sometimes we screw stuff up or I have problems contextualizing, one idea or one story or one concept or one note with another one. And sometimes there's a disconnect and you screw it up. And, that happens. Like I think we were doing the Rockets game a couple of weeks ago or last week. And for some reason, like I've covered Victor Oladipo a dozen times, but for some reason I said he was drafted by the Thunder instead of saying he was drafted by the Magic. Like, and in my head, like that made sense in the moment. Somebody pointed it out, and I was like, I can't believe I even said that. Like, why would I say that about a guy who had been drafted 3 years prior by a different team? Like, I know that in my head. I know that in my brain, and it's in my notes properly. Why didn't it translate? And it just sometimes happens. But like that's part of the risk you take when I do my own research and sometimes you just hope that everything, is firing off correctly and you remember everything you're supposed to remember and it connects the way you want it to connect when you're telling a story. And sometimes it doesn't happen, but more often than not, because we put all this work in, it usually I hope it translates. Like I hope the work that we put in, Stacy, myself, Jason and Kendall and Will and everybody who works on these games, I hope that knowledge does translate properly because we do put actual work and time and effort and investment into that stuff.
Yeah, I think it shows for sure. I mean, I have the slightest. I mean, I barely know what all goes into it, but I just know I've loved doing the whole podcast thing and just chatting with guys like you and Dan Schulman and whoever. So I really appreciate what you guys put into your broadcasts. I know with Lindsey Zarniak and Mark Schlereth on the NFL, I've been keeping tabs on you guys when I can watch the games when you guys are on out here in Virginia. So I appreciate what you guys do. So I think it's cool.
No, thanks, man. I know Lindsay would appreciate too, being one of Virginia's finest. She's a proud Virginia person. So
I remembered her from the Sports Machine back in the day. So
that's right.
But
she had some good stories about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I was curious actually. So talk about how weird it's been covering games, the NFL, baseball, the NBA in a pandemic, no fans. I mean, I'm sure it's still, even though we're kind of used to it, obviously, I'm sure it's still weird.
Definitely. I mean, I sense it more now doing basketball. I didn't sense it as much, even in the we did a playoff series during the baseball playoffs where we actually got to be there in Houston in person. Like even that didn't feel very odd to me. Doing football all year didn't really feel that odd to me. Basketball, I can really feel it because it's a closed space. Again, we were in Houston. It's a dome, like at Minute Maid Park, but like I didn't feel we're so far away.
Yeah.
And even now doing games at the United Center in Chicago for Bulls home games, because we do the road games out of a studio, like doing those games, it's more odd because I almost feel like when we speak, like, and Stacey and I are energetic, like we have a good time. We like talking, like we like joking, we like laughing. Yeah. So when we have those moments, I almost kind of feel self-conscious. Like, is Kobe White going to hear me and Stacey laughing about something when he's taking a shot? He thinks we're laughing about him. Like, I know that's not the case, but it just feels that way because we're still connected enough, and we're still close enough, and we're in an enclosed space consistently that it makes it feel that way. So, like Stacey and I were talking about that the other night during a home game. Like, man, it's still a little odd generating this energy in a place where you're sitting in an arena expecting energy to come to you, because that's how it's been for 15 years of my life doing this job in some capacity. And for Stacey, I'm sure it feels the same way. Whereas like when we're in a studio, like we know we have to bring our own energy. We know we have to create it because like we're well aware that this is abnormal. Like we're not in the place, we're not in a studio. So let's do the things we have to do to make it feel normal. Whereas in a stadium, you're expecting, like if you're in a stadium with 20,000 seats or a stadium with 70,000 seats for a football game, you're expecting some energy to be reciprocated from that from those spots, from those seats, and it's not happening. So I think that's been the big, disconnect between, doing games this way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like you said, being in the enclosed environment, and I'm watching. I'm used to now. I'm watching games on TV, and it seems normal. I hear the fake crowd noise, but at the same time, I see the empty seats in baseball and hockey arenas and basketball arenas, and it's like, I'm used to it now, but it's still kind of weird.
Yeah, I think football, we got used to it really, really quickly, just because we knew we were going to watch. Everybody still watches. Like, ratings haven't really gone down that much for any reason. If they have, it's been a little bit. I think Al Michaels once said, "You go from number one to number one, what a drop." But like, I think we got used to it very fast because we knew we were going to watch NFL games. It's part of, it's kind of woven into American culture now at this point. Whereas basketball, the subset of us it's a large subset, obviously, but the subset of us that love the NBA, like, you have to get used to it a little bit. And only now is it going to be closer to the forefront of American sports, because college basketball is lacking a little bit of direction. And once the Super Bowl is over, the only pro sports out there right now, really, that people, again, amongst the four major ones, I don't want to upset soccer fans or anything. It's just it's not my bag. That's okay.
Same, yeah.
Right. But like, for me, like, football and hockey, or basketball and hockey, are like the two main sports that come to mind. And for me, it's the NBA. I don't really pay that much attention to hockey. So like, now I'm really, like, even I'm going to start paying more attention to other games, and I'm sure fans are going to do the same. So we're all kind of like navigating this, this kind of cultural process, in a very interesting fashion.
I think too, I was talking about hockey real fast. I remember I was watching the game last night, and Eddie O for the Blackhawks was doing the game for NBC. And, I'm so used to them, or I'm used to thinking like they're in a studio. Like you just said, you're kind of remotely in a studio, and it's like you watch the game and it sounds natural. It's almost, I wonder if going forward, even when we get back to hopefully normal, and I'm sure everybody wants to get back to stadiums again at the same time, maybe, it's like, well, we can do it remotely if we have to now.
Yeah, I mean, and I started doing games like this in 2016, for ESPN. We were already doing stuff like this, and Big Ten Network's been doing it for way longer. They've been doing it, for a decade at this point. So it's not as if the option wasn't there before. I think out of necessity, the option was used. And I don't know how, I was going to say the words large majority, but I don't know if that's accurate. But I do feel like a large group of people, it might be a majority, it might not be, I don't think they care. I really don't think most fans care. I don't think a lot of them can tell the difference. Where I sense the most difference is when guys are doing games from home. And like, I remember texting Beth Mowens at one point, like, she was calling a game from home as a college football game. And I could tell that she was at home, because I could feel the delay between her commentary, which I'm sure she's reacting to whatever's on her screen in her house in real time. So she's speaking to what she's seeing in proper sync. But because of latency and because of video coming from Connecticut or the videos coming, let's say she's doing the game from Utah, or the game is in Utah. The pictures going from the cameras in Utah to the studio in Connecticut, back to her house in San Diego, and then she's reacting, and then her audio is going back to Connecticut. It's amazing that it's as sharp and tight as it is within a second, let's say. But that's still a second that I can tell, and it throws me off, and it takes me out of the moment a little bit. So my hope is that executives, networks, all that stuff recognize that having at least the announcers on site makes a big difference in the presentation of it and the reaction of it. But I also understand that until you get fans back and until it's back to quote unquote normal, whatever it is, you're never going to get all these elements back anyway. So maybe some executives or networks are like, well, let's just wait until everything's normal, and then we'll try to get back to that at some point. Right. I'm sure that's one line of thinking to it. So my only hope is that whatever I say, whether it's out of a studio or on site, is in sync with the picture that you are watching. Like, that's all I care about. Like, when we were doing baseball games for Fox during the summer out of a studio, and I'd go back and see a highlight, it was really frustrating because there was a separation. It wasn't a lot. It was maybe a half a second or a second, but it was really annoying to me as somebody who has built their career off of being very good rhythmically as a broadcaster. That's frustrating to know that even though I'm calling the game as I see it in sync, knowing that the actual product is out of sync is frustrating to me as a broadcaster.
I really appreciate that insight though, because, like I was saying, I watch the games on TV and it seems normal, it seems great. You guys have it all together. But just from my own experience doing podcasting and stuff, I hear little mistakes of stuff that I wish was different in some way. No one's going to know, but I'll know, and it bugs me. So I totally get that. I mean, in my whatever, not compared to what you're talking about, but I totally understand what you're saying.
No,
so I like,
absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. So I was curious. So what's it been like for you covering the Chicago Bulls?
I got an email from our assistant GM today, and we were just catching up. Good guy's named Steve, and he was just like, "Hey, I enjoyed this thing that you and Stacy were joking about the other night. Hope everything's going well." And I just responded with like, "The whole thing feels like home," which I think fits. I mean, it's home. It legitimately is home. Like I'm a 8-minute drive to the stadium. I'm a 6-minute drive to the studio that we do the road games from. Like, it feels natural. It feels like, comfortable. It feels like it fits. And part of it too was the ramp up, being able to fill in, work with Stacy, work with these producers and graphics people and directors. Like, I know them. Like, we did 10 games or 8 games, whatever it was, 10 games over a couple of years. So at least I had some experience. I knew I was going to feel that wasn't going to be a problem. Like, right. I'm going to work well with this producer and director. I'm going to work well with Stacy. I'm going to work well with the crew. And I know this team enough, and I know the league enough because I've been covering it long enough. So all those like baseline elements got knocked out. The rest of it was just like getting used to calling a game for a team and what was the routine day-to-day prep wise. And like, that was more of the learning curve than anything else. And just through that learning curve, learning what comfort is for me in terms of broadcasting frequently for the same team. And I haven't had to do that in, probably 10 years, 10, 11 years, the last time I worked for a team. So like, once I got past that, it felt very easy. And I'm not saying that the job is easy. I'm saying my feelings about it, my comfort level, like it just fits. And again, like I said, I'm sure part of that is being from here. Part of that is knowing this team as well as I do as a fan, like growing up with this team. The guy that I work with was one of the players on 3 title teams that I was a kid, like watching intently. So like I have all this connectivity, and I just wasn't sure. I knew that when I got hired, I just didn't know how it was going to translate. And so far, I don't know what fans feel and like how they perceive it. And they're certainly, of course, entitled to feel however they want. They may like it, they may not. That's okay. But I feel good. I feel good in the job. I enjoy the job. It feels like a fit, and that's all I was really hoping for. And so far it's delivered.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that story. And yeah, you seem like a natural fit. Whenever I see you on TV doing any game, it's like, that's awesome. Like you're ESPN, Fox, Bulls, whatever. It's like, this is cool. So I was also curious too. So I know you covered a lot of Buccaneers games this year. I don't think you caught the Chiefs this year, did you? The schedule didn't quite.
No, the Final Four, the Chiefs were the only team I hadn't seen.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because I was looking at the broadcast schedule throughout the yesterday. I was looking through. I was like, okay, you've seen the Bucs a lot. So I was curious about your thoughts on the Super Bowl preview, or on the Super Bowl, kind of like a little preview. How you kind of see that kind of shaping up between Tampa and Kansas City.
I mean, offensively, Kansas City is who they are. Like they're aggressive. They have all the skill sets like covered throughout their lineup. I know they've had some offensive line issues in terms of injury, which obviously I think Eric Fisher got hurt, but which obviously may help Tampa Bay, which has a really good pass rush and really good outside linebackers, and their front's really good. But in terms of trying to limit Patrick Mahomes, like he lulls you in a lot of ways. I think part of the reason he's hard to defend is because he has the ability, and it's a unique ability. There's not many quarterbacks ever that have had this ability, but he has the ability to lull you to sleep because he's done so many spectacular things from that position in just the last 3 years that we've gotten used to a certain level of like a certain baseline quality to what Mahomes does. So when he does like these kind of no-look shovel passes to Kelsey up the middle, like we've seen it a couple times. So we're like, all right, that's just Patrick Mahomes. Like that's just part of his game.
Yeah.
So you can kind of get lulled to sleep by those things, which are truly spectacular compared to like relative to like the position and how it was played for 30 years. And he's doing some things that like we just haven't seen in a long time. So you kind of get lulled to sleep by that. And then it's his ability to improvise. Like that's the other way where he's deadly. Like you can get lulled to sleep by some of the by his high level of baseline quality because it's expected, and then you remember, oh, I still have to defend that, and it's much harder to defend than his baseline efficiency is harder to defend than most other quarterbacks' baselines, which are down here, and Mahomes is up here. So with those elements in place, and because he has so many release valves to kind of operate with Kelsey and Hill, and when they're healthy, Sammy Watkins, and he's got like 3 receivers that are all capable of doing something that's hard to defend. So that's the biggest issue for Tampa Bay. They've had struggles with teams that can out leverage them. Like their linebackers, Barrett, White, Levante David, they're so fast. They're some of the fastest linebackers in the NFL. And what Mark Schlereth would always tell me, because we did, as you said, we did a ton of Tampa. We did 4 Tampa Bay games this year, and at various points, week 2, week 3, week 7, week 15. So like we really saw the evolution of this offense and Brady and Arians and how they got better. But like the thing I noticed on defense the most was they had trouble with teams that were just as quick, because they would get you could get them flowing one way, and they're so good in that linebacker flow to get to the ball carrier, to get to a wide receiver on a screen, that if you're able to counter that or throw back against it, then you have the ability to out leverage them or use their leverage to your advantage. And I think Kansas City is one of the teams that is so fast at almost every position on offense, including Mahomes, that I think that's a major problem for Tampa Bay's defense. Now, you have to execute that. That's the other thing. Like, in principle, that's exactly what you need to do. But can you execute that in the biggest game of your life for a lot of these guys? That'll be the biggest question.
Yeah, who do you think will end up winning that game?
Man, I'm rooting for Tampa Bay in the sense that, like, I've enjoyed watching the evolution of the team.
Sure.
And when you've been around people and when you've spoken to people, you naturally have a little bit more investment in them. So I'm kind of rooting for Tampa Bay in that sense, just because we were around Arians and Fournette and Mike Evans and like Levante David and Devin White. Like you kind of get to know some of these guys a little bit in whatever sense that you're getting to know them. Brady included in that mix. I think Kansas City is just so scary good. I really do. Like they scare me. Like Buffalo was one of the few teams that I felt could slug with them.
Agree. Yeah.
And they shut them down. Like they shut their offense down for 3.5 quarters. So it's really hard for me to pick against Kansas City right now, just with the way they're playing. But I do think we'll have a much better game than maybe some of the lines are showing. So
I do think it'll be close. And I mean, for me, it's just the Brady factor. I mean, I do, it's hard for me to pick against Brady or Mahomes. I think Kansas City would win, but I mean, Brady, it's just hard. It's hard to count the guy out. So he's done it so many times.
I mean, that's the thing. It's a good matchup either way. That's what's good. That's how you hope for, it's not huge markets, Tampa and Kansas City. I don't think it really matters because you have enough star power. Like you have, I think arguably the 2 biggest stars at quarterback right now playing the game. Like Brady for his longevity and Mahomes because he's the next iteration. Like you have probably the 2 biggest quarterback stars in the game playing in the Super Bowl. Like it's a really easy sell. And I think they're 2 of the more talented guys. So I do get the sense we'll get a decent game out of it.
Where do you think Watson will end up? I know I listen to ESPN 1000 all the time. So I know they're talking about Watson all the time and the odds of the Bears could actually pull that off. But where do you think Watson might end up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant, and I talked to some of those guys too about it, and I was hesitant just because of the front office situation in Chicago that Watson would be going into. Denver's front office situation is a little bit more in flux too. I think the Jets are at least in a position where they feel like for at least 2 or 3 years they're going to have some stability in the front office. They just hired Robert Saleh. They just, made that move now. So when you're going into a situation where all right, they just hired this guy, they're coming off a rough stretch with Adam Gase. Maybe they're at least giving Robert Saleh 2 years, maybe 3. So at least I can get some stability for a couple of years in New York. Now, can you handle the media aspect of it? Like that eats up a lot of guys. I don't think it would eat up Deshaun Watson. I think he's a pretty mature kid. But like that's definitely a question. It's hard, man. It's really interesting to see. Like the Chargers feel like they're set. Could Indy be a great spot? Like I don't know if that would actually be made as a trade, like within the division. I don't know if that would happen. It's the same way I feel about Stafford and the Bears. I feel like Stafford would be a good type of quarterback to get into Chicago.
Right.
But are you going to make an interdivisional trade? I just don't think it's going to happen. So like I honestly, like, it feels like New York would be a good spot for him. I feel like you could trade up. If you're the Jets, trade the number 1 pick. Don't overthink it because you're going to get a huge haul back, and then you can build on defense where Robert Saleh has made his money, and I think he's one of the premier coaches. I don't know about coordinators, although he did a great job in San Francisco, obviously. I think he's one of the premier coaches. That was another guy that we spent some time with that I was just very impressed by. Our crew had him 3 times. I had him twice. And both times I talked with him, like, I walked away remembering a lot of the things that he talked about, his philosophy. And the guys that are willing to open up about that are the ones that usually get a lot of praise and usually a lot of hype too. Like, that's part of the media and the PR of it. I'm not saying he was doing that for that. I'm saying that's the type of person he is, and he's an easy person to root for. Right. So, to be as open and honest and candid as he was, I feel like if you give him the keys, I think you could give him the keys to make, some suggestions on what he needs and not have him worry about the quarterback position. Just say, we're going to go get Deshaun Watson. We're going to trade the number 1 pick. We're going to get number 2 pick. Sorry. Number 2 pick. We're going to get Deshaun Watson. We're going to trade the number 2 pick. We're going to get a bunch of haul back. We're going to get 2 first rounders for him, or a first rounder this year and 2 second rounders. Let's build our defense and get an offensive lineman from that stretch. Like, I think that'd be a great situation for Deshaun Watson. I think it'd be a good situation for Robert Saleh.
Yeah, that made a lot of sense to me too, because I was thinking, like you said, New York, as good as a guy like Trevor Lawrence might be, for instance, Watson's already the sure thing, right? Like you said, you have that haul, the capital, you could kind of potentially trade that and see how that plays out. So
and I think there aren't many players that come out of college, especially in football, where you're just like, yep, that's a sure thing. I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is a sure thing. He feels like as close to a sure thing as you're ever going to get.
Right.
So with that being said, if you also have an option that's on a similar track with less risk, if you feel like Watson is less of a risk than gambling on a potential generational talent, but you can get more back from it, it's a safer play, and it's still a positive gain. It's a net gain for the Jets. So I think it's not a bad move by any means. And again, I keep forgetting, like, Jacksonville's got the number 1 pick.
Right. I'm
saying just in the sense of what you're giving away, if that was the line of, if that's the line that you're on, then, there's nothing wrong with that. You could make the same case for Jacksonville. You could say that for Jacksonville too. Why?
Exactly.
Okay, let's go get Deshaun Watson, trade away the number 1 pick to, Indy or another team that really feels like they need a generational quarterback, and go get some help for Deshaun Watson and make a play for that. I don't think it's as complicated as people might make it up.
Oh, agree. Yeah, I totally get that. Just a few more quick things. I was curious. You mentioned talking with players, coaches, and all that before games. What was it like talking to a guy like Brady? And have you ever been nervous talking to these athletes or media? I know you're in the business, but
I get nervous because I don't want to ask a bad question. Like, I'm not nervous to meet. I don't really care about that, or it doesn't register with me because I see greatness all the time. I'm surrounded by greatness. Like, I have championship analysts for everything. I like. Mark Schlereth has 3 Super Bowls. Stacey King has 3 championship rings. I've covered guys like I've called moments for these players, whether they know it or not, that have been monumentous. Like, that doesn't faze me. But what does faze me is I don't want to waste people's time. And when you're as well known as these athletes are, and you have the stature they do, like, time is essential for them, as it is for me doing this job. I don't want to mess up by asking dumb questions or coming off as uninformed. Like, and you have to battle your own insecurities in that sense. So, like, when you're more like the third time I talked to Tom Brady, yeah, I don't think he knows my name, but I think he knows who we are. Oh, you're that crew. Okay, cool. Yeah, we've talked before. I remember one thing from a previous conversation. That's cool. Like that's all well and good.
Yeah.
But I think it's more like, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to make it seem like I haven't prepared for this. I don't want to make you feel like I don't care about this interaction. I do care about this interaction. I want it to be a positive use of my time and a positive use of your time. So like, that's what scares me more, especially in like, you know, when interviewing Damian Lillard before like game 2 of a playoff series, like that's a valuable 2 minutes. It's on tape too. Like these are off the record conversations with Brady and Arians and stuff like that. But like, like that's an on-air radio interview. This is an on-camera interview that's going to be somewhere. I don't want you to look bad. I don't want me to look bad. I don't want either one of us to feel like this is a bad use of our time. So that's what gets me more nervous, quote unquote, than anything else.
I feel that because I've been doing this podcast for a long time with different people and I've gotten used to them, but I had like a nervous energy before talking with you because I was like, I don't want to waste his time. I don't want to. So I was like, but then we started, I was like, I know he's super chill. He seems really cool. And I was like, I'll be fine.
But again, like I have to learn that, like you have to learn that about your subjects in an interview the same way I have to learn that too. Like I've interviewed Damian Lillard a couple times now. I've interviewed Tom Brady a couple times now. I've never done an on-air interview with LeBron. So if like at some point I have an experience with this guy, he has no experience with me, but he's played a role in a lot of big moments in my career and a lot of games I've done. So I have all this background that he doesn't have. So I'd be nervous talking to him if it was going to be an on-air interview because I don't want to waste his time, but I also want to establish connectivity and like, hey, I know you, like I've had moments with you, like, trust me, I know you. Like you're almost prefacing these things to make yourself feel like, to make this other person feel like this is going to be a valuable use of my time. So it's hard. It's hard for anybody who's in a position to have to talk to people. Like it's just, that's part of the territory with it. You know,
makes a lot of sense though. Before I let you go, I have to ask you. So I'm a huge ESPN 1000 Black Abdaal guy, so I know you know them very well. I think did you intern under them or intern with them?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So I intern under Abdaal. Yep.
Yeah. So I was curious just if you had like a quick thing about Black and Abdallah or just, I listen to them like every day. They know who I am. I tweet at them all the time, call in. So I've talked to them on the podcast, so they're awesome, but had to ask you about them real fast.
They're just like my friends now. Like I remember texting or messaging both of them when they got their show made official, in the night slot. And I was just like, yeah, man, like this is like you're Chicago celebrities now, you know, like I kind of mess with them in that sense just cause like I've known them for a long time. I've known both of them for a decade, like, longer than that. Almost, like I've known Abdallah for almost 15 years. I've known Bleck for like 10 years. So like, for me, it's just like watching friends do well. It's honestly, that's my only perception of them now is my friends are doing well. And I'm like, I like them as people. Like I know their wives, I'm friends with them. And so when I get to watch or listen to them just do what I kind of always hoped they'd get a shot to do, and they've worked really hard to do, it's nice. It's a satisfying feeling when, you know, the people you're invested in do a good job and they do a good job. And that's really all I care about is like, they're happy doing what they're doing. And I think they do a really good job at it.
Yeah, it's like I don't even know them, but I feel like I do because I interact with them every day on Twitter or in some way, and it's just like they're like bros without actually knowing them. So it's really cool.
They're accessible. Well, part of the reason I think I'm sure this is part of the reason I get along with them so well, and we're all around the same age. I'm sure people who are older than me feel that way about Waddle and Sylvie, which I feel that way about them too. Yeah. But like I'm sure people that are about the same age and like have the same reference points and grew up in similar eras or whatever, you're just going to have more connectivity with them. And for me, like, that's what Chris and Adam are. They're just like, they're buddies, they're brothers, like they're bros. Like I've known them as long as I have. I know what their voice is, so to speak, you know, like I know what that connective voice is like when they're actually on air. So like, to me, it feels we were talking about ease and comfort and fit. Like it's just an easy fit to me for those guys to do what they do now.
Yeah, I've been listening to them for the last few years, and I totally see that all the time. So it's definitely true. Well, Adam, this was fantastic. This was exactly what I knew it would be like with you, just chatting with you. I know it was a long time coming, but I really appreciate you putting up with my Not trying to bug you DMs, but just
Okay.
keeping tabs.
No, all good, brother. I'm glad we finally got a chance to connect.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really appreciate it again, and hope you have a good rest of the night. And I'll catch you on TV doing whatever games, I'm sure, soon.
No, I appreciate it. Well, thanks.
All right, thanks. Really appreciate it.